Welcome back to the Dynamic Nutrimedical Report. We cover everything. We cover the best wellness products and nutraceuticals. We cover the best politics and solutions. And we are, in a sense, political, you want to call it agnostics would be a good term. We want to seek out the best politicians that seek and help people and nation states rather than destroy nation states and destroy people. And that doesn't matter what party they are. We want to see a political system that is representative government, as it says the initial tenets of the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights was that a Constitution should protect the rights of the individual, and if they don't, then the people, the nation, should be able to throw off those governments. And we have certainly an illegitimate government now. Even the statements by Sarah Palin, as Harley mentioned to me on a break just before the show, she's even getting fed up with the Republican Party. And we have some remarkable new issues to talk about today, especially the insane behavior of Obama and the so-called Supreme Courts about Argentina. And what's amazing to me is that it's like walking into a gang fight with no weapons on you and punching the biggest gang guy, the most ugly guy, the guy with a snarly face and a weapon in his hand and a high-powered weapon and a chain that's sharp and razor sharp that can rip your shoulder off, and yet you think you can walk up and punch him with people surrounding you, knowing that you're not going to get out alive, but you're stupid enough to do it anyway, and you can't back up what you say. So when Obama makes statements like it's in the courts about Argentina, and you can still force stripping a sovereign nation of its property, this is an obscenity. And of course, the Organization of American States, the OAS, absolutely condemn America. And Harley, I'd like you to take it from there, because this is a good intro of just how, if you want to destroy the American dollar, you treat people with disrespect, you treat nations with disrespect, you don't back it up with any force of any kind of action whatsoever. And, if Obama wanted to destroy America, he's doing a dang good job of doing it.
Well, Obama is an operative of a foreign power that's been trying to destroy America since we were founded. And that's the reality people have to come to terms with. It's not that Obama is a bad president. He's actually very competent for doing what he was put in for. The problem is most Americans have this illusion that he actually intended to do some good when he ran for office. He intended to further the power of the British Empire globally and the financial and interlocking corporate entities that are tied to that power of the British Empire. And so that's what Obama has done, and he's been a brilliant success for them. The United States is teetering on economic collapse, on moral collapse, on physical collapse. We're about to get embroiled in another war in the Middle East and possibly a nuclear war with Russia. The dollar it's still the only currency in the world that has value, but the value is lower and lower, and other countries are looking to get rid of it. So I think what people should realize is Obama is not a failure. He's a success.
Right.
It's just that he intended to finish off the U.S. Constitution as a constitutional republic.
Yeah, well, I think that his idea of finishing it, because he wants to make it a post-colonial world. And this comes right from his communist biological father, Frank Marshall Davis in Hawaii, who was a communist. And really what Obama is a corporate fascist. He really has amalgamated all of his previous bad ideas, from his school in Indonesia, where he was a Muslim, to his communist father, to the corporatists that he now is baying to. Everything is an amalgamation in this monster, who basically is destroying the nation because his masters wanted to destroy it. And they're using America as like a used whore to be thrown out of the Cadillac at 80 miles an hour because it's time for the whore to die. And that's what's happening to America.
Well, and the other thing to realize about Obama is that the intent of his administration from the beginning was precisely to carry out this destruction.
Right.
Now, what some people say is this is socialism, this is communism, but you hit the nail on the head. It's corporate fascism, corporatist fascism.
Right.
It's a government by corporations, and this is, this line that corporations are people too.
No.
This whole the direction of the Supreme Court, it's corporations über alles. And our country, and this is where so many conservatives and libertarians are just confused. They actually have the belief that our founding fathers intended to set up a government that was very weak. Now, that's completely wrong. They wanted a government that was strong to do certain things. And those are defend the nation and promote the general welfare for ourselves and our posterity. Now, how that's interpreted has been a matter of disagreement. But the Founding Fathers actually did set up a government. And for those idiots who disagree with that, and I say idiots because I get all the time people say, well, you're a big government guy. I'm not a big government guy. I read the Constitution. The Constitution gives to the government the power to regulate interstate commerce. The Constitution was based on the fight against Great Britain, not over taxes. That's number 17 on the list of complaints in the Declaration of Independence. Their primary opposition was with the tyranny of the British government, which did what? It set up monopolies to take power away from the colonies. And the monopolies like the British East India Company are today's Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan Chase. And so the government is supposed to defend us from those entities. Now, what Obama and his pals at the Supreme Court agree on is that there's no longer a need for sovereignty to protect people and governments from supranational agencies. And that's where the problem is. And so people who say they're fighting government should be fighting the corporations that took over government and are throwing out our Constitution.
Yeah, so the real issue, people,
of them.
Yeah, they try to pretend that we don't need government. No, we don't have government. We have corporations that literally in the boardrooms will decide everything. And they're doing it through their proxy whores in Congress and the Senate, and the rotating doors between, say, the Federal Drug Agency, the FDA, we call the fatal drugs allowed people. I mean, it works in every aspect where corporations have infiltrated, and this has even been blocked by governments like in China. Communist governments are not nice. These are not nice people, but yet they pulled back and wouldn't let transnational corporations try to control everything in China. And now the real battle is between the transnational corps and these countries where we pump them up like China and India and so on by transferring business to slave labor, and they're balking at it. Well, it's going to be an ugly fight, and that ugly fight could enter into a world war, besides a financial war, and that's where we're being pushed because the bankers know that the derivatives game is just about over, and the only thing left is to bring about war and devastation to get even more power and more of what's left after everything is burnt. It's a scorched earth policy is what it is.
Well, and that, in fact, is what's happened. And we're now dealing with a situation where you no longer have a capability of individual governments to act on behalf of their people. Yeah. And that, to me, is where you see the real problem. Yeah. And I see this as a policy where our international interlocking military support of nations like Israel, which means there's no strings attached, so the Joint Chiefs don't really have control over Israel. On the one hand, we can't leave them defenseless. On the other hand, then we transfer weapon systems to our potential enemies that have already sworn to bring down American and European jets with man-pads and Stinger missiles and surface-to-air missiles. We have an insane foreign policy where we even oppose Maliki, we put in power, and we want to support ISIS, that could become a bear for us in the whole Middle East. And yet we continue to do financial policies that encourage people like Russia and China to try to destroy the dollar rather than to improve it and stabilize it so that they have customers and we have an expanding economy. Everything we do is wrong. Everything. Welcome back, and a quick 2-minute report from Tim Alexander that'll fit in perfectly with our analysis and projection of where things are going. And they're going down, as I say, they're circling the maw of an open volcano of geopolitical, financial, and environmental disaster that we need to turn back from. Tim, what's the latest moves in Gaza and Hamas?
Less than an hour ago, Hamas fired 3 M75 rockets at the Israeli nuclear reactor and weapons site at Dimona. Two of the rockets missed. One was intercepted by the Iron Dome missile, anti-missile defense system. These M75 rockets have a range of about 50 miles. They now have the range on the site. They've locked the target in. I have to tell you, I realize Hamas, they've been hit with 400 or more strikes just within the last 24 hours by the Israeli Air Force.
Right.
But this is very, very insane, because even though the main shell at Dimona is very thick and will take a hit from the size of the warheads that the M75s have, there are many, many points of vulnerability, and it's very much a crapshoot. You're firing something in that's designed to create havoc. If it hits the right place at Dimona, it can create a disaster of biblical proportions.
Yeah, what we're looking at is Dimona, and let me give you a little history. Dimona it stole a lot of nuclear materials from America back in the 1960s, which is partly tied into the death of John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, the French helped to build it, and it's pictures were published from the guy that. But it's very dangerous. There's all kinds of plutonium and enriched uranium there.
Let me just give a little history. Tim, let me give a little history. The history is also, since the 1980s, there have been attacks on the plant, mismanagements on the plant, so it's been limping along since the 1980s. So because they couldn't produce enough weapons-grade plutonium, they've been stealing it from everywhere, especially America, and especially from our MOX reactor systems like the Savannah River plant in South Carolina, where I took care of employees back in 87, 88. And I can tell you that the situation, including micronukes, they've had micronukes, the Israelis have had at least for 30 years. They go back to the original Davy Crockett research back in the 50s and 60s, which is the battlefield nukes that they developed back then. They use techniques for these micronukes that generate a lot of tritium. That's why you find high amounts of tritium in the World Trade Center, because it was micronuked the core of the building, which creates, thousands of degrees of temperature that can melt the core of the building, but don't produce a long flash. The isotopes that are generated are very short-acting relatively, but there was radioactivity, and a lot of people did have radioactive isotope-induced diseases.
Yeah, they use the steel superstructure as kind of a reverse parlay cage.
But they also got a lot of people got very sick and did get radiation-induced illnesses, and the kind of literally nanoparticle iron. They had asbestos. People don't know this, on all the pillars of the building, 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches thick.
That was sprayed on.
Which was sprayed on. So they had the giant asbestos vapor, as well as the steel and all the other structures. And anything paramagnetic, like steel, water inside people, was vaporized. Things that weren't like paper were just blown out the sides of the building. And so what we're dealing with right now in Dimona is a giant storehouse of nuclear materials for more weapons, a limping along nuclear reactor, which is still operational, and a whole lot of missiles, like a lot of missiles. We're talking about probably between 400 and 800 missiles there.
Yeah, they've now got the range on this thing, and if they ripple fire a barrage of, say, 50 warheads at it, Iron Dome is, of course, the M75 is not a very good missile, but and maybe one out of three was going to hit it. Okay, Iron Dome is not a very good system, but it's the best anybody's got for that type of intercept.
It's okay if they know it's coming.
Yeah, well, if you hit it, it's a numbers game. If you fire enough at it in a very short period of time, you overwhelm it.
Exactly, which is what I was told, because I took care of the employees at the White Sands Missile Base and Vandenberg that were working with the U.S. Missile Defense Command, because they had a security clearance to actually take care of their employees in the mid-'90s. And I can tell you, the fact is the system won't work. It is a missile to hit a missile. They know the missile's coming. They literally have a pretty good chance, maybe 70%. If it overwhelms them, let's say have 10 missiles coming toward a specific target, they're going to fail. They're going to fail enough. The target's going to get hit with a high-yield weapon, fuel-air bomb, dirty bomb, high explosives, whatever, and it's going to cause devastation. And if the radioisotopes are released over Israel, you're going to see a radiation cloud rise that's going to really cause a lot of devastation, because Israel is a tiny sliver of a country.
Well, if that happens, Israel will go nuclear too.
Well, Israel will go nuclear. They'll retaliate nuclear, and they have. Most people don't realize that the third nuclear power is not Israel; it's Japan. But the fourth nuclear power is Israel. So we got the United States, Moscow, Russia, which is the Soviet Union. People try to say it went away. Japan is the third nuclear power. They're not on the list of people. And then Israel. And Israel's got a lot of nukes. They could literally nuke every city over 50,000 within 7,000 miles that's Muslim and turn it into obsidian glass and everybody into basically an atomic vapor.
Yeah, right now Israel is saying that they've hit Gaza harder than in the last 2 days than they did in all of 2012.
Right. Well, yeah, they're getting ready for something big. Okay, and I know that. To be honest with you, if you're in Israel and you know all these surrounding countries have 200,000 missiles aimed at you with chemical weapons, fuel, air bombs, etc., the Israeli philosophy is to strike hard, strike now, like the 6-Day War. Don't wait till they get off the tarmac. Destroy the runways, then destroy the planes on the ground, then roll in and crush any way of them escaping from the area. So the Israeli blitzkrieg kind of policy has been very effective in the past, and I really think that Israel isn't going to wait a long time. If they think that ISIS and these other organizations are stop fighting each other and start to turn on Israel, Israel's going to crush them.
I doubt that ISIS would do that because ISIS is owned by us.
It's all part of the game, remember. Remember now. It's like a cockfight in Mexico.
Get out of here because I just wanted to
I want to hear the response from Harley. Harley, what do you think about this latest news of the craziness of what's going on in Israel with Gaza, and of course this is also tied back because remember a lot of the chief bankers come out of Israel, these international bankers. The banks in Tel Aviv are actually like the new Switzerland of international money laundering as well. Things are, and their economy, by the way, is booming. It's not like here that's limping along since 2008. It's booming in Israel.
Well, look, the whole lid has been taken off the situation, and Netanyahu has been intending to strike someone for quite a while. What you really have is an Israeli-Saudi-British alliance, with Obama fully supporting it and arming it and backing it against Iran and Russia.
Exactly.
You're right. Absolutely. 100%, Harvey.
Yeah, and I think, in other words, the players are being laid forth for World War III. And once it starts, these fools can't contain it. It's going to go real bad in every possible way. Financial, geopolitical, environmental, nuclear, biological, chemical, fuel, air. Every way of destruction will be unleashed. Let's go over these articles that were sent by Belinda from the LaRouche Foundation. I think are really telling as to where things are going. We have the predatory policies, the same virtually, that set up the Treaty of Versailles that forced the nation of Germany into World War II. We have the echoes of 1914 now in 2014 with the international banking policy driving war. And you have the articles here by Helga, Zepp-LaRouche, the wife of Lyndon. The greed of the Vulture funds will backfire. There is a limit to the tyrant's power. Then the article by We Must Adopt LaRouche's 4 Laws. And next article, A Case Study in Sovereighty, Argentina and the Bankruptcy of the Financier Oligarchy. This is actually, replaying history to the point where it's almost like America, being like a golem, is desiring to start World War and devastating the world economy and the American public. And we're also seeing this policy with flooding America with tons of illegal immigrants. We even have contacts, inside contacts, that have proven that CIA connections are actually killing Native American males in Guatemala, so that these desperate females are coming with their babies across the border, and there must be collaboration with the Mexican government, because nobody gets anywhere unless you're bribed. And the Mexicans are allowing these trains with these people to get on from camps that are there for weeks or months, to get on the death trains and land on the other side of the Rio Grande River across in Texas. And they're busing them all over the place, infested with tuberculosis and other illnesses, rather than properly quarantining and helping them. It's an obscene situation, and it's being pushed by a nation, America, and its president that's not an American president. He is an international globalist, fascist leader that wants to destroy the nation state, not only of America, but every nation. So the nations like Argentina have no rights. If we say you owe the money, we're going to grab all your assets, even if it kills your population. This is the policy that drove and created the rise of Adolf Hitler. This is not a good thing.
No, and look, the point is that there is a significant motion building against Obama, which we've been talking about every week. The fact that Sarah Palin came out on Breitbart and then on Hannity yesterday saying that she thinks Obama must be impeached, and she attacked the Republican Party for not doing anything, that's significant.
Right.
Now, Palin's not alone. There are a growing number of Republicans who are discussing this. We spoke to a Republican congressional office here not too far from Houston the other day, and they said, boy, in the last week, all of a sudden we're getting more calls on impeachment. We're in Washington this week. The Congress is in session for 4 more weeks before they pretty much adjourn for the upcoming elections. Now, what we have to say to the Congress is don't come back to the district without an impeachment bill on the table.
Exactly.
And what that means is that your listeners have to start calling the Congress. The Congress is, at this point, caught between the need to raise money for re-election, their fear of being attacked if they go after Obama, and their constituents who are saying, get Obama out now. We have to get the constituents' voices louder and more powerful than those who otherwise are trying to bribe them with money. And so that's really the issue. I mean, how many of your constituents have actually called congressmen's offices and demanded impeachment? And I think this is really what we have to do.
Exactly. And the fact is that now is the ripe time. Because here's the scenario, and without putting dates and so on this, but I see a scenario where we see a disaster driving the price of oil up from Middle Eastern crisis. I see a disaster where we're going to have America call for a move toward war, and he won't go to the Congress. He's going to go to the United Nations and NATO. And he's going to get us in not only another quagmire in Iraq, but a quagmire in Ukraine with NATO forces there against Russia, and in the Middle East against Syria, and now Maliki, who's allying himself with the Iranians and the Russians. And
another regime change strategy, which is to get rid of Maliki.
Right, and the problem is, you see, who are you going to put in now? I mean, it's like, it's like shuffling the deck of cards and thinking you're going to need a better card when they're all bad. And we created these guys. I mean, George Bush Sr. recruited Saddam Hussein on the streets of Baghdad. People don't know that. The fact is that we're constantly meddling in other countries' foreign affairs, balkanizing and breaking them up, controlling their international situations, even the CIA operational now killing, basically Native American men in Guatemala, and creating a desperate situation on the media side, making it certain that everybody knows that we don't kick out 70,000 plus illegal aliens that basically are committed felons. If they're a felon, they need to be deported. If they're not, well, put them through the process with streamlined systems to become Americans and learn how to be an American and work hard. But, that's a long process. It can take years, and they don't get citizenship or the right to vote until they've proved themselves. This is irrational. This is a real simple problem to solve, but they want to make it insoluble. This is part of the story we always hear from these fools, is the problem can't be solved. Whether it's Fukushima or the geopolitical problem, and LaRouche always comes up with simple, straightforward, and historically accurate and supported methods of approaching, whether it's energy, flux density, geopolitical issues, international finance, whatever. We have solid reasons, and everybody tries to pretend on the corporate, we would call fascist side, that it can't be solved, which is a bold-faced lie, isn't it?
Well, you have people who are very cynical about the process, and that's understandable. But cynicism breeds passivity and ultimately subordination.
Right.
And, the worst thing is the wise guy who says, I watch Fox TV, so I know all about it, and then does nothing to change it. And this is a big problem where we don't have a population anymore that believes that they have the constitutional power to dump a corrupt president. And then you look at someone like Boehner. What does Boehner do? Boehner says he's going to file a suit against the president to force him to abide by the Constitution. Well, that just shows that Boehner is not at all serious about doing something about Obama, because if he were serious, he wouldn't go to the court. The court responsible for dealing with unconstitutional activity is the U.S. House of Representatives to draft a bill of impeachment and then send it to the Senate.
See, that's right. You got the right point. The fact is, it's a court of peers, representative government, and you don't need to go to a separate court. The court is the Congress. And Boehner is not only compromised, as far as I'm concerned, because he's always looking desperate, like this desperate look on his face, when the fact is the man is corrupt. If he did his job right, you wouldn't hear comments like from Sarah Palin, who's just so fed up, she finally had to open her mouth. And by the way, she's going to be on the View shortly. It'll be fun to see her actually just kind of taking pot shots at the Republicans, because they need to wake up. I mean, people think of her as just Barbie, and they always make stupid comments.
Boehner thing, because this is actually really important. I mean,
right.
Boehner's whole point has been that you can't get impeachment because the Senate will never vote for it. Well, wage the fight. Let's see what happens. Let's see if Democrats are willing to support Obama. I have a feeling that there are going to be some Democrats who are not going to stick with Obama.
Exactly.
Yesterday in Colorado, Obama had a fundraiser for Senator Mark Udall, but Udall wouldn't show up at the airport with him.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so he was willing to take his money, but he wasn't willing to get a picture taken with him.
Well, he doesn't do a photo op that's negative. I mean, you take your money, but he doesn't want if you stand by Obama has got this kind of like, I call it the event horizon of narcissism around him. He's such a poser that if you pose with him in a photo op, it's like a black hole. It's going to suck all of the glory to this one fool who's always the smartest man in the room, and he has no idea. He doesn't even talk to advisors. I mean, so no wonder Mark Udall doesn't want to stand with him. He just says this guy doesn't listen to anybody. He only hears his own viewpoints, even if it's unqualified. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yep. No wonder Udall. So there's a big revolt brewing. I think they need a revolt now, or the Democratic Party is sunk. And the Republicans, I don't want to see swing to the other way, too, thinking they're going to grab everything. Back, and Harley, America's policy really is a pre-war stance. It's a stance of these banks. You mentioned about the banks in Austria and so on. Let's repeat that, please. We're talking about that on the break. This is really bad.
There's a $12 billion bank called the Hypo Alpe Adria Bank, which had essentially been bailed out in 2009, bailed out again in 2011, and now it's a $12 billion bank, and it's again bankrupt. And so instead of declaring it insolvent and selling off the assets, what they're doing is they're taking money from the debt holders. And this is a bail-in. This is the first time since Cyprus in Europe that there's been a bail-in, that the depositors essentially are the ones who have to pay. Now, this completely shocked people in Austria. But then the next day, there was a downgrading of the two largest banks of Austria, Erste Bank, which means First Bank, and Raiffeisen Bank, which is a savings bank. They were downgraded by Goldman Sachs, by Morgan Stanley, and others, which means they're going to have to pay more to borrow.
Right, but you tell us the reason for it, though, because this is really scary when you hear the reason.
Well, the whole European banking system is teetering. And Draghi, the head of the European Central Bank, is pushing a quantitative easing plan, even though governments don't have money. So what are they going to end up doing? They're going to do the bail-in. And Argentina, the theft of assets of the sovereign nation of Argentina is a bail-in. The theft of pension funds in Detroit is a bail-in. But once you start doing this bail-in, why would anybody leave money in a bank? This is the disillusion of the banking system. And what they're basically saying is they're going to do whatever they can do to survive in the short term. And in the long term, they're going to go for massive write-downs, and the way to get out of this for them is war.
Well, the thing is,
there's been what the empire does when the situation is out of control.
In other words, here's the summary. The short term, they're going to grab everything. The long term, there is none. In other words, we don't care because most of the public will be either a desperate state or dead. That's what the real issue is.
Well,
a desperate
Plan B
state or
is
dead.
Retreat into gated communities and have a police state and slave labor to keep the society functioning. And, you know, for Americans who say, oh, this is really, I mean, some Americans say it's already here. Some Americans say you can't fight it. Some Americans say it's science fiction, it'll never happen. Look, it's happening. And the question of whether or not you can fight it is whether you have the guts to acknowledge that what's happening is happening, but it can be fought. And what we need, I did an interview with a legal expert named Francis Boyle, which is posted on our website, LaRouchePAC.com. Boyle laid out how one congressman can begin an impeachment proceeding. One congressman can get on the floor of the Congress, lay out a bill of impeachment, and insist that the Speaker have a vote on the spot to set up a committee to look into it. Now, in the House, which is controlled by Republicans, if the Republicans had any guts, this could happen today. And the problem is the Republicans have no guts and the Democrats have no guts, and neither of them have any moral principle. So the only way to move this, because a lot of them are talking about it, the only way to move it is to get the constituents to move. And, you know, people say I'm an idealist by saying that could happen. Well, the country depends right now on a handful of idealists mobilizing to force the corrupt office holders to do what they're supposed to do.
Right,
so,
exactly.
yeah, I'm an idealist. I think that there are enough people in the United States who care about the future that they will do something to preserve it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the fact is that these things are not far off. We're talking about months away from war in the Middle East getting out of control, weeks away from Russia having to do something to stop the Kiev government from doing disasters in the eastern Ukraine. We're dealing with a financial system where literally Putin and his allies, China, etc., have already declared death to the dollar. This has happened in the past with various leaders in the Middle East that want to have an oil bourse and their own money system, which would, of course, lead to a caliphate, in the sense of financial caliphate, of the Muslim countries, even if they're disparate in their religious beliefs of having a common financial system. It was Muammar Gaddafi's idea to have 22 Islamic nations from Morocco all the way through to Indonesia that would link up, up to 2 billion people with a single oil and gold standard and a single gold-backed currency. That's got him killed. The same thing with Saddam Hussein had inched around the same idea, trying to become the military leader that would eventually create a financial system as well. And when they decided to try to divert away from the U.S. petrodollar, that's what got them killed. I mean, people need to face the music. It wasn't because they had weapons of mass destruction. It was because they had weapons of mass financial destruction against America that they got killed. And this situation is going to get way, way out of control because America can't back up what they're saying now. They can't back up against all the BRICS nations. 2/3 of the world is against America now. 2/3. The world is not ours anymore. And we're pissing a lot of people off, and we're going to get in a lot of trouble for it.
Well, and this is, if you go on our website, you can see that the majority of the nations in the world support Argentina over the United States and the Supreme Court ruling. The majority of nations, 80% of the human race, people live in countries that are supporting Argentina and are moving toward getting out of the transatlantic financial system. So the question is, can that happen without the United States? And Lyndon LaRouche is saying that without the United States, without our potential, well, first of all, if Obama stays in office, he'll do anything he can to crush it. That's why we're at war all over the globe, because he wants to crush China and Russia. But if you get Obama out, the United States can once again be the nation of admiration for the world over. We can once again take our role and our spot in history, and that's what's required.
Right. In other words, we start to act as a proper leader nation that has a moral authority because we act moral, like a true Judeo-Christian viewpoint. We act in a position of strength, so we back up things with strength. We don't tolerate immorality like drug trade, where we actually are supporting, with Fast and Furious, some drug cartels, but not others. That's what the whole thing of Fast and Furious was. We don't tolerate corruption in our federal government, where they should not be going off to prison, because we want geopolitical gains, so the Republicans don't prosecute the Democrats when they're doing crimes, and vice versa. I mean, it happened during the Bush era as well. The problem is we have government now almost thinks that the old story was we have a government by and for the people. Well, now we have a government that owns the people. It thinks that somehow we are captured, if you want to call herd, and they have turned America into a farm. And we're all being farmed now for the political good, not of even American politicians, but of the global bankster elite. And if it's their desire to eliminate most of us or to set up a healthcare system that's basically like Nazi eugenics, they got it, which is what Obamacare is.
Well,
and of course,
we're being turned into the population of peasants who have parasites sucking our blood.
Well, it's a new form of what I call 21st century geopolitical, we call high technical authentication feudalism, a form of corporate feudalism of Earth Inc., literally destroying the nation states, which is what Obama's doing with Argentina. It's like saying, you thought you had a country, you thought you had representative government, think again. That's what Obama's really doing. It's not just Argentina. He's going to Argentina, Canada, Guatemala, any country that basically will come in with the CIA, will come in with our bankers, will come in with federal laws, we'll do whatever the heck we please, and if you don't like it, well, we'll drone you.
Well, you can call our office if you want to do something about it, because we are coordinating this move to say to Congress, don't come back until there's bill of impeachment against Obama. And they're supposed to adjourn in less than 4 weeks, so we got to move this now. Call us at 800-922-2907. Impeachment Central. We'll get you hooked up with people in your district who are involved in this. We've got to move the Congress immediately. They must not come home until Obama has a bill of impeachment against him. So call us at 800-922-2907.
Impeachment Central. And the other thing we have to remember is this window's closing. If we don't remove Obama now, there'll be a national disaster, a biological weapon, a nuke go off, there'll be a form of martial law. I don't think if we don't remove this maniac, there'll even be a 2016 election. That's my gut feeling. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
But my gut feeling is the people that want Obama in there and the power and the momentum they have, they don't want to have a national election of anybody, Republican or Democrat. They just want to move forward with their agenda because it's a globalist agenda that wants to make America, like I said before, like the used horse thrown out of the Cadillac at 80 miles an hour. They're done with us. They don't care if America gets nuked, destroyed financially, starves, and every city is like Detroit. We call Detroit, where now the Chinese want to buy it. Pretty bad, but that's the facts. And our solutions, be an optimist, be a believer, and trust God, and do it.